And we are live, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. For that, we will call the City of Albuquerque Intergovernmental Legislative Relations Committee to order. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. I know we have a light agenda, but an important one as we get updates from our key partners with our lobbyists as we have a lot coming down the pike very soon. So let's just start first, if you don't mind, with an update from our state lobbyists, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Park. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. And hi, everybody. I'll be very quick. So the session starts in just under 2 weeks. And so I will say this, in the 16 years that I've been with the city of Albuquerque, we're so far ahead of schedule as it relates to capital. I mean, some of that was because the deadlines got moved up by the state, but it's also because our team, the team in the mayor's office, Josh and Libby, and the team, and then Mr. Menicucci and his squad and the counselors, everybody has really, really been hustling to make sure that we're prepared to put our best foot forward in the session. So my compliments to everyone. We're getting great feedback from legislators. Probably we're hearing preliminary numbers on how much members are going to have. It was stated at a dinner last night, but we believe the individual discretionary amounts of capital will be very comparable to what they were last year. So it's just over 4 million for senators and like 2.5 million for House members. We're going to have so many new members, so we're going to be focused on obviously connecting with those folks so that we can have, a healthy relationship with them for the entire time of their service. And just very excited. Feel like we're really ready to go. So thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll stand for questions or turn it over to Mr. Park.
Mr. Park, do you want to go ahead and then we can ask questions to whichever of you want to answer?
Thank you. Joe is right, and that the session starts in less than 2 weeks, but in many ways it feels like the session's already started. We are going to have, I believe, a very frenetic pace for the upcoming legislative session. The two main topics that the legislature is going to consider, and this is based upon reports from legislators up and down, are public safety and behavioral health. There is a very strong movement to try to address some of these issues early on in the session. Senator Worth in particular is pushing for almost a bifurcated package with respect to behavioral health, public safety at the outset of the session, followed up by other legislation closer to the end, as we would normally do. The fact of the matter is that we do have over 20 new members of the House. I'm not counting the House members that went to the Senate. I mean, I want to say 20 members of the House and the Senate that are new. There will be a lot of work to educate these legislators, but I will also say that I attended the freshman orientation and it is very exciting. The new legislators are bringing a very optimistic, dedicated, hard work perspective to the upcoming session. I think that we have real opportunity to collaborate with legislators both from the Albuquerque-Bernalillo County area as well as those from rural parts of the state. I did want to say that we've done a lot of work with respect to both the behavioral health and the public safety issues over the entire course of the summer, the winter, and I think that we are very well poised to be a part of all of the discussions going forward as the legislature tackles these issues.
Thank you, Mr. Park. Do any of the members have any questions for Mr. Thompson or Mr. Park? Great. Well, you guys covered everything clearly. Thank you. Next up, Mr. O'Donnell, I just appreciate you being here as well. These are interesting times for us as we have a change in administration at the federal level. It'll be exciting to watch all of the goings on. So I'd love to have your insight. I know you provided me a document today that's valuable insight, and look forward to hearing from you. Mr. O'Donnell, you're still on mute, so thank you.
Taking myself off mute.
Madam Chair. Yes, thank you for the introduction. And yeah, it is a very interesting time here. And what makes it a little bit more interesting and actually a little strange is that you have an inauguration taking place in about 2 weeks, and you have a former president lying in state in the Capitol building today with services tomorrow at the National Cathedral. So yes, this is a really interesting time because you have a new administration coming in with a plan to adjust defense spending, border security, domestic spending cuts, more energy, domestic energy production, and I think I said tax cuts already, but tax cuts or the extension of the tax cuts that this incoming administration passed almost 8 years ago, 7 years ago. So in order to do what they want to do, the Republican leaders in the House, the Senate, and the White House, you have to do a reconciliation package to adjust the spending to make the changes that you want to bring into the budget process and the appropriations process. So that is going on at the moment. On another track, and it could be blended into this, but on another track, what you have is the FY25 spending appropriations bills, which by themselves is another very complex set of dynamics because you have bills that were drafted with very, very different assumptions. In fact, in the last iteration I saw of the Senate package, it had a number that was very higher than what was in the budget debt limit agreement that was passed in 23 for FY26. So on domestic spending, it had a figure of about 793 billion, and on the defense side, it had a figure of 916 billion. That's the Senate side. The House expectation for FY26, or I'm sorry, 25 is much lower than that. They did not even use the basic top number of 1.6 trillion that was in the deficit agreement package in 2023. So you have these numbers that are far apart, and they are trying to find some common ground where they can make some adjustments on the spending that is proposed for FY25. They have until March 14th. That's when the current CR expires. I think that there's an agreement. I haven't heard it articulated this way, but I think there's an understanding that if we want to do a separate package of reconciliation and address the president's priorities, we need to get the FY25 package finished and out the door. That may mean that both sides will have to swallow some cuts. And one of the things that I heard last week when Kyriakis and I went up to a number of House offices where they were having welcome back events, there's a lot of uncertainty about what's going to happen with the appropriations or the earmarks in the appropriations bill for FY25. To give you some idea of the scope, both bills, the earmarks in the bills that both the Senate and the House marked up, it's around $8 billion for earmarks. The House was 8 billion, the Senate was 7.9. Just to give you the scale in terms of support that there are for earmarks, there are, I think it was 4,380 earmarks in the House appropriations bill. They don't do a total for the Senate because senators can ask for so many more. They're not limited to the 15 that House members are limited to. So there's clearly a lot of support in Congress for earmarking, which is why we think the process is going to continue in FY26. But the wild card here is whether the president weighs in at some point because of the negotiations over reconciliation and over the amount of spending in FY25. If he weighs in and says that against earmarks, which is going to get a number of Republican members to probably take a different position on the earmarking and whether they ought to be included in the FY25 bill. So those are the fiscal dynamics that are under consideration on the Hill. And as we said, there are two kind of timing things here. One, March 14th driving a date by which the appropriations bill needs to be done for FY25, and the other is the interest on the part of Republicans in giving the president some early victories on border defense, domestic spending, energy production, and tax cuts. So that's the picture there. I'll stop and see if there are any questions. I would like to talk just a moment before we conclude, or before I conclude, about committee assignments in the New Mexico delegation.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Any questions for Mr. O'Donnell from the committee? Nothing? Okay.
So the only notable two changes in the congressional delegation assignments are that Senator Heinrich has become the ranking member on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee, which has forever been an important committee for New Mexico senators. The other change also on the Senate side is that Senator Lujan is now a member of the Senate Finance Committee, which means he is going to be in the midst of any tax bill that is written. And it's actually a very good assignment for Senator Lujan because it affects so many areas of commerce, so much in the way of domestic policy. And he'll be in the middle of all the tariff discussions regarding the Trump administration's proposals. So it will be a very interesting time for him. Congresswoman Ledger Fernandez did try to get an appointment on the House Appropriations Committee. That did not turn out. So all of our House members continue to serve on the same committees that they've been on. And I did send Mr. Parkinson and Mr. Menicucci a list of those committee assignments, so I won't read through them, but it's going to be an interesting 119th Congress, and it'll be interesting to see how our congressional delegation navigates national policy with impacts in for New Mexico. And Madam Chair, that's the conclusion of my report.
Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. Are there any questions from the committee?
Madam Chair, I have one question. So, Mr. O'Donnell, in your opinion, if they do kind of cut back on some of the federal earmark dollars for the 4,000 and some projects, do they typically go project by project and kind of cut the whole thing, or do they just kind of give you a percentage of what was kind of already approved through the process up to this point?
That's a very good question, and it's one that I frankly hadn't thought about that way, because in the past, when they go in and cut earmarks, they will go in and cut the whole package. There won't be a percentage. They would do the whole thing. And I think one reason for that is it would cause a lot of appropriations subcommittee staffers to probably lose their sanity. That would be an enormous bookkeeping problem. They would cut all of them.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. O'Donnell? Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell. I appreciate that update and the information that you've provided. Okay. Next up on our agenda is to look at the proposed 2025 meeting schedule with the amended dates based upon including our legislative session dates. Mr. Menicucci, would you like to walk us through this?
Yes, Madam Chair, and I'll turn this over to Mr. Thompson. What the amendment is at the last meeting, Mr. Thompson, I believe Mr. Park requested that we put on, that the IGR, excuse me, the IGR members add on Saturday dates, which is what we used to during the legislative session when the city used to hold its IGR meetings back before the days of Zoom, when they were in person. We'd hold them in the committee room of the council on Saturday mornings at 10. They had requested this because as the legislative session gets into its second half, and it's more important for them to be at committee meetings as bills move forward. It's harder for them during the week to break away to a midweek IGR meeting. So the committee did recommend that we do prepare a schedule with the Saturday meetings. If you look at it, everything that says 10 a.m. is a Saturday meeting. If you look on the time column, and it's just during the session. And of course, they are also listed as only call as needed. So once I think we start the 15th, we will we start with the 15th. We will check staff. We will run we'll check with Mr. Thompson and Mr. Parks if we do need a meeting, and then if we do, we'll run it by you, Madam Chair, if you want to call a meeting. I think with that said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Thompson to kind of fill in a little bit.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minicucci and Madam Chair. This is something that we know it can work, and we want to make sure that we're available if you want us to be. And like, there are certain times like 3 p.m. in the middle of the week, it's just almost guaranteed something's going on that week. So the quality of our availability is not great at those times. That being said, if we wanted to move it to after hours or early in the morning, we would do whatever works for you all. And one of those options would be on the weekends, but we're totally open to whatever works for you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. So what I'm hearing, Mr. Minicucci and Mr. Thompson, is that the 10 a.m. on the Saturdays is the standard that you've set, correct?
Right.
And that works, Mr. Thompson, for you all in terms of imagining the session and the 10 a.m. on Saturday fitting for at least one of you to potentially have availability.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then the second item on here is the standing 3 p.m. I think those are Wednesdays, if I'm reading this right. Is that right, Mr. Minicucci?
Yes, Madam Chair, except during the yellow ones, those are occurring on a number of days throughout the session. When the first part of January, you're having a meeting, first 10 days separated and then 4 days separated. Then once we get into February, and that stays about 4 days separated, 3 or 4 days separated. And then once you get to February, it looks like in the later part of February, it stays throughout February, 2 or 3 days separated. They're on call as needed meetings. And then once you get to March 12th, then you go potentially a meeting every day.
Great, thank you. So with that in mind and the feedback from Mr. Thompson, I would like to ask, is it better if we change all of these 3 p.m. meetings that we have on our agenda here to, are you suggesting, Mr. Thompson, 8 a.m., 8:30? Or are you asking for 5 p.m.? What makes sense?
From my perspective, the 5 p.m. makes sense more than the 8 a.m. But that's Mr. Park. I don't know for you, like their committees are happening there early in the morning. They're getting there right at 8. And so I don't know.
Madam Chair, Joe, the truth of the matter is it doesn't make a difference. Once we really get into the frenzy of the session, it's going to be a little bit of hit and miss. But the good news is that typically one of us can always be on. So you said it, we'll endeavor our best to be there. They may be brief, but we'll certainly do our best.
And I just want to be clear, the need for the meeting and having the meeting it seems to me our intent is that you all would tell us we need the meeting because you have an update to give us, and you have something that we need to be either paying attention to or need to take some action from. So I want to make sure you all are driving this, and then I'll ask the committee what their pleasure is.
Yeah, Madam Chair, you're absolutely correct. Like, we will be probably in contact with folks from the council, folks from upstairs all the time anyway. There are certain things that are like, we may know, oh, the deadline for capital has been changed to X time, or this new thing has been set. And those are things that we'd want to make sure that we're letting everyone know. So that's kind of the design is for when it's really important or something happens that justifies us having sort of that family meeting. But it's really up to you all. We'll make it work.
Okay, thank you. So I just like to ask the committee, do you all have a preference? I think it makes sense that we would change our 3 p.m. meetings to 5 p.m. And again, these are if they are needed, then that would be when our meeting would be called for. Counselor, any issues? I want to make sure that I'm you all little tiny pictures on my screen right now, so I don't want to miss the opportunity for you all to give your feedback.
Madam Chair, I think it's fine. And then we're gonna find out which, if the 3 of us still stay on this committee, or because there could be other counselors that serve on the committee too, so. But I think it'll be fine in my opinion, either way, and I anticipate it's not like it's every 5 o'clock every day for the whole session, so I think it's fine to be flexible.
Thank you. Any other feedback? I think we have consensus, Mr. Menicucci, that we would like to move the 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. on our published schedule for folks. Give notice for those meetings, and then we will plan for them to all be published, and we will cancel them as they are not needed with everyone. And our goal will be that we'll make that decision by midday. Does that work for you mechanically, Minister Menicucci?
Yes, Madam Chair, with one addition, if possible, that also, besides the per your instructions, committee's consensus to move 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., but to also delete the 5 p.m. meetings on those days that are council days. So we would remove that from the schedule.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Very good point. And make sure we catch that. I appreciate that. So we will delete meetings on council days, change our times to 5. Thank you all. Do we need to take a vote on that? I don't think we do. Do we?
Yeah, ma'am, it is our official posted. If it's all right with the committee, since we do officially post it and publish it in the newspaper, that if it doesn't, if that would be that, it'd be appreciated if the committee could just take a quick vote that we did adopt it.
Okay, so then I think I heard you that you would like us to take a vote. Is that right? Okay, thank you. I don't know why I can't hear Mr. McKinch all of a sudden,
Oh,
but
sorry.
no, that's not your fault. I think it's my ears. So, okay, with that, then I would ask the committee, I'll just run through there. Councillor Bassan,
Yes.
Councillor Grout, Councillor Pena, Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Whalen,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you all. Did I miss somebody? I don't think I did. Okay. With that, we will have our new agenda of, schedule of meetings. Mr. Menicucci, if you could update that and also send it out to the committee members as well. And I know that I think it's Elaine that usually makes sure our calendars are up to date for our meeting notices on this. So thank you for that as well. I appreciate the work that you all put into keeping this committee going as we move through the next very busy time period.
Okay, and so Madam Chair, with that, Elaine will be sending out next week or two, next week, probably a invite for all the meetings during, if that's all right, for the session, even though some of them won't be had, just so that way you have it, even though they won't be had, you at least have it on your schedules that this meeting could pop up. And
yes, that's very much appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Menicucci, and thank you, Elaine. It's very helpful when we have it on the calendar. Is there any other business? Any member have any business? Mr. Menicucci, any business?
No, ma'am.
Great, thank you. Well, with that, then we will be adjourned. Thank you all very much for your time this afternoon. Very efficient, appreciate it. And thank you to Mr. Thompson, Mr. Park, and Mr. O'Donnell for the updates.
Thank you.